What is going on, guys? Happy Red Friday to all of you. It is Red Friday indeed. You know what that means. Another edition of the Red Friday live chat. Yes, week 4 edition of the Red Friday live chat. I had to double check my phone just to make sure I wasn't making a mistake with the weeks. We're already in week 4, man. Week 4 of the NFL season. It goes by fast. I'll say this real quickly. I remember when I was a sports director, my senior year at KU. Obviously, you're responsible for so many things, picking different play-by-play broadcasters for each game and whatnot. And man, like the football season went by real fast. The basketball season went by real fast because you're so caught up in trying to organize everything and making sure all the coverage goes well. It goes by pretty quickly. I've had different jobs in sports media where, you know, it feels like games go by fast, and then you work a different job, and depending what you're doing, it feels like games go by slow. It's just funny how that works sometimes. All right, well, you guys know how this all works. This is the Red Friday live stream, or Red Friday live chat, I should say. So this is your guys' show. Whatever you want to discuss today, or tonight, rather, depending where you are in the country or in the world. It is all up to you guys. I want comments, questions from you guys. Well, how are you guys feeling? You guys want to talk about the Chiefs? You guys want to talk about Taylor Swift? You want to talk about other happenings in the NFL? You guys control the discussion today. Usually, I kind of start off giving my thoughts on certain things. And then you guys kind of just take over from there. Obviously, I'm by doing that, I'm stalling a little bit so we can get more and more viewers. Because obviously in the early going, no one's tuning in as soon as you hit the stream button. So let me just say this. I think what's really nice about the Chiefs right now is they are in the top 10 in several categories right now. Total offense, total defense, points scored, points allowed, passing game, against the pass, just outside of the top 10 against the run. And I think some of these things, like, okay, week 1, that happened. It sucked, but whatever. It's in the past. Congrats to Detroit. They got, you know, maybe their biggest win in the history of their franchise. As far as the Chiefs and everything they've done moving forward since that game, the offense, you know, even though they scored less points in week 2 against the Jaguars, I thought the offense still looked like a better football team. Again, off to a slow start again, but they played much better. They moved the ball well, and I think that was the most important thing to me. And they moved the ball pretty well against the Lions, too. That was not an issue. The issue was just catching the ball. Then again, listen, I know I say these kinds of things sometimes, but you don't take credit away from Detroit. They deserve credit for getting the win. But that was a situation where you look at the Chiefs in that game, they shot themselves in the foot. They hurt themselves more in that game than Detroit did anything to capitalize and dominate that game. I think if anyone looks back at the aftermath, like the Friday after the game, I'm watching all these shows, ESPN and Fox Sports. Normally I don't watch these shows because I'm busy, you know, either working or doing whatever. But everybody had the same sentiment. Like, okay, these drops suck. They got to be better, but they will be better. Like the universal notion moving forward was the Chiefs will be fine. It's just one bad offensive game. They're not going to look like this on a consistent basis. And right now you have this Bears game that we had last week. Obviously, people remember it for different reasons, with Taylor Swift being in attendance and all. But the Chiefs' offense just flat out dominated from the get-go. My only complaint was they did not get a touchdown on the first drive. That's what I wanted. I wanted the Chiefs to get a score on the opening drive. They've yet to do that in 3 games this year. Can they do it in the 4th game against the Jets? I think you have to. And again, not that it's the end of the world, or, you know, you lose the game if you don't, but isn't that what teams are supposed to do? To make a statement, set the tone for the game, score on the opening drive, even if it's just a field goal, just get points on that first drive for the offense. That's what I want to see. And I think this offense is going to pick it up. You look at who they're playing in the next few weeks, not a lot of great defenses. You obviously have the Jets this week. They are just terrible in everything. You look at the Vikings, they're not a very good defensive football. In fact, the Vikings are not a very good football team in general. They all of their games have been one-score games, but they're winless on all of them, which is crazy because they won every single one-score game last year in the regular season. And then they just came out flat in these 3 games. You look at the Chargers, not a very good defensive football team. The Broncos, I think you already saw what happened in that Dolphins game. Not a very good defensive football team. In fact, you play the Broncos twice in 3 weeks. I think in the month of October. Yeah, you play the Broncos twice next month, which is going to be in 2 days. Not the Broncos games, but the month of October, that is. So there is an opportunity for the Chiefs to move up in the top 5 in just about every offensive category. Total offense, passing, points scored. You can move up. Now, how are they going to do in total in rushing yards? That I don't know. Obviously, the Chiefs are not a run-first team. And the running backs, they've got 3 good running backs, Pacheco, McKinnon, and I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is doing a good job in his new role as a Chief. But this is, I think, a team that uses their running backs more for the passing game. They're 11th in rushing right now. I just had to look that up. So there's a chance for them to move in the top 10 in rushing and move up in the top 5 in all of those other categories. They're 6th in well, hold on. Let me get this right here. They're 6th in passing, 5th in total offense. So they're already top 5 in that one. And they are 9th in points scored per game. I think they were 10th. Obviously, the Packers played Thursday night. So that obviously impacts the rankings right now. But going into week 4, they were number 10 in that category. So there's a chance for them to move up in the top 5 before that Germany game. So I'm very excited to see that. All right, so those are my opening thoughts. I will now turn it over to you guys. And let's get started with Blake's comment here. Can't wait to see what Charles Omenihu is going to add to this defense. Yeah, some people have been talking about that. With the way the defense has been playing this year, one of the best defenses in the NFL, just shutting out teams left and right, not letting opposing offenses do whatever they want. Even in that Lions game, you're like, yeah, sure, the Lions converted on some key third downs there and were able to move the ball, but not enough to really just run up the scoreboard or anything like that, even without Chris Jones there, which I think was the most impressive part about that game defensively for the Chiefs. So, and I still stand by everything I said. Like, that game was not because you were without Chris Jones and Travis Kelce. That was a very winnable game without those 2 players, but it didn't happen, plain and simple. With Charles Omenihu coming back in a couple of weeks, he's got 3 more games left in his suspension, and I'm curious to see how much he gets used. Mike Danna's been playing very well. George Karlaftis picking up right where he left off last year, and FAU off to a decent start as a first round rookie, and obviously a lot of eyes are on him because he's from Kansas City too. So this is a huge deal for him. And by the way, I mentioned Karlaftis, who was a first-round draft pick last year. How about those 2 first-round draft picks for the Chiefs? Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie. This is a big reason. It's important for your defense to do so well. If you're going to draft, if you have 2 first-round picks, which the Chiefs did last year, and they used both of them on defense, which was not a surprise to me, you probably need to have a successful defense moving forward. You already have a pretty good defense in general with Chris Jones, Nick Bolton, L'Jarius Sneed. Although I will say I think Sneed is taking a little bit of a step back in certain areas, but I think playing well for the most part. I think Justin Reed is a very underappreciated safety, even amongst Chiefs fans. This is a very good defense. And again, like, I just gave you some of the names. Outside of Chris Jones, you don't have a lot of household names. Yeah, Karlaftis is a first-round pick. McDuffie's also a first-round pick. McDuffie I don't think he's had an interception or any kind of takeaway yet in his career. I know he's had a couple of forced fumbles. So obviously but statistically, that does not count as a takeaway for him individually. Obviously, I mean, listen, yeah, sure, it's a team effort and all that, but you obviously want to get some picks out there. That's one of the things with cornerbacks. I think you look at Sean Smith, who played for the Chiefs, 6'3", 220. big cornerback, one of the bigger cornerbacks you'll ever see in NFL history. Very underrated safety, great cover lockdown cornerback, but nobody gave him his flowers because he didn't thrive with those stats that actually come up on all these sports websites like ESPN and NFL.com. So I think Trent McDuffie is playing a lot like Sean Smith right now, where he's playing great defense and is a great open field tackler, but he hasn't really thrived with those big stats that we always think of when we think of defensive backs. Jim says, hope 95 gets a lot of sacks Sunday night along with Karlaftis. Guys, the Jets are last place in every offensive category. We went over this on Wednesday's podcast. This isn't even a contest. There's a very good chance for the Chiefs to, I mean, they're going to have a field day on offense and defense and special teams. I just can't imagine the Chiefs not being able to dominate in this game. This would be one of the biggest upsets in Chiefs history if they were to drop this game for whatever reason. Just say Rashee Rice is ranked number 11 in the NFL. Yeah, I posted that earlier this week. Yeah, Rashee Rice ranked 11th by Pro Football Focus. Not in terms of like total yards or anything like that, receptions, not that kind of way. Again, I know people have their opinions about PFF, but they're grading based on so many different things. And I think one of the reasons why Rashee Rice is ranked so high is because of his ability to get into the open field, get the ball, and just go out there and get a lot of the yards after the catch. You know what Chiefs critics always say? Oh, Patrick Mahomes, his passing yard stats are inflated by the yards after the catch. Well, tell that to the defense to not let guys get so wide open. And by the way, do you remember Rashee Rice in that preseason game against the Browns where he had all those drops? And so many people were complaining because, oh, this guy's going to be a bust. Well, no one's saying a single word now about Rashee Rice. He had the first touchdown of the year for the Chiefs this season. So I like the way Rashee Rice is playing right now. I hope he continues this stretch. I may or may not have an anytime touchdown bet on him for Sunday because I think he's going to get in there again. He had 2 opportunities last week. And he was brought down at the 1. He was awarded a touchdown at one point, but they took it away because he was down at the 1 yard line. So he had 2 opportunities for a score. And again, I know what players always say, oh, well, it's all about the yeah, but come on, man, you want to get into the end zone. I can't remember the name of the radio host. Years ago, I heard this on ESPN radio. They talked about how one of the most exciting things in sports is scoring a touchdown. When you score a touchdown, you deserve that moment to celebrate. And that's why, they criticized the league for having very strict rules on celebrations. It's like, man, you just scored a touchdown. It is one of the most exciting things in sports. That and scoring a goal, like scoring a goal in hockey and soccer is tough, even if you're the best player in that sport. After that, like getting a touchdown, it's just not easy to get into the end zone with the way defenses are in the sport. So hopefully he gets one this week. Jawan Taylor targeted, not fair. Yeah, and I've talked about this. And by the way, Prince Tegawanagu, who was recently placed on IR, he went into the game in place of Jawan Taylor last Sunday against the Bears. They told PTW to line up the same exact way, and he did. He didn't get called for a penalty in the game. It's just wild. It's just wild the way people go about that. Oh, well, he's got to adjust. Well, tell that to Lane Johnson or that Cowboys left tackle. I can't remember his name. I mean, come on. Use Sunday night as a wide receiver tryout. He's got to start building rapport with a wide receiver. Yeah, so I think you may be talking about Justin Ross. A lot of people. I'm just laughing because every single live stream I do, whether it's the Red Friday live chat or the podcast, everyone is talking about getting Justin Ross involved. So I think that's what a lot of that has to do with. I think that's an opportunity. Kadarius Toney obviously moved down on the depth chart, so maybe this would be an opportunity for him and Mahomes to maybe reestablish some things on the field because he was pretty good last year coming in, like coming in on short notice. in the middle of a season and picking up the offense the way he did. Brett Veach talked about that in the offseason leading up to the draft. So it'd be good to see him throw the ball to some of those guys. And again, with his ankle injury, you don't want to risk anything during a blowout. Look, here's my criticism of Sean Payton, which is funny because he thrashed Nathaniel Hackett and talked about how bad of a coach he was last year. You're leaving your starting quarterback on the field when you're losing by 50. Like, what are you benefiting from this? I thought it was smart of the Chiefs to yank Mahomes when they did in the middle of the third quarter. There's no reason for him to play the remaining 25 minutes or whatever it was exactly when they took him out of the game. But yeah, and again, Montreal, Washington, what if this is a guy that plays more? Maybe this would be, you could kind of maybe use that fourth quarter as like a preseason game, unless something goes terribly wrong and unexpected in the stretch there. When have the Lions ever had a big win? It's a good question, Patrick. I don't think they've ever had. Doug says, on any given Sunday, any NFL team can win or be flat and get beat. Don't overlook anyone like last year in Indy. Yeah, but I'm not a player. I'm not a coach. I mean, I'm not. It's not my job to not take these guys lightly. I mean, that's for the players and for the coaches. I mean, look, it's the Jets. They are last place at everything. And by the way, I didn't talk about this on the podcast this week, but Aaron Rodgers went on Pat McAfee's show and was talking about the whole situation with Joe Namath, who obviously, I mean, an icon in Jets history, the way he just threw Zach Wilson under the bus, and Zach Wilson handled it very classy. He said, "Hey, look, he's a legend and everything." I always think it's interesting because players don't like when the media has opinion, especially those in the media who've never played sports, and that's fine. I can understand that standpoint. But when you hear someone who does an interview, or someone who is like an analyst, or maybe a former player who does like a weekly radio segment, or even just players who former players who tweet a lot during games, like last year, if you guys remember in week 1, McCole Hardman, who's now with the Jets, the Chiefs are going to see him this week. Mark Borector lashed out at McCole Hardman, and those two guys went back and forth on Twitter. It's like, boy. And I heard Borector, because Borector goes on 810 once a week, and he kind of explained himself. He goes, he basically said, it doesn't matter what I say. Yeah, but you go on weekly talk radio once a week and you tweet a lot and you have these opinions. So how are we going to have this strong opinion about someone and then backpedal and say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter what I think. It's up to you if you want to. Like when former players speak up and have a strong opinion like that, active players are going to hear about it, and they're definitely going to want to stand up for themselves and respond. I know Andy Reid does not like that kind of thing, but athletes in general just do that kind of thing. Jim says, I'm waiting for Karlaftis to get a pick 6 soon. I mean, pass rushers and defensive linemen in general don't get a lot of defensive touchdowns. I mean, you're referring to a pick 6 specifically. That'd be cool, but that's not really anything I'm thinking about with Karlaftis. That may be, I mean, the odds of a defensive back getting that are much, much better. I know Chris Jones has 1 pick 6, and I think he has another defensive touchdown that wasn't an interception, but a fumble recovery. I could be wrong, but yeah, Jim, the no fun league, that's what a lot of people were calling it. Elaine says, I was hoping for a Rodgers and Mahomes matchup. It's wild to me. I've already talked about this before. They've had 5 opportunities to play. Obviously, this game in 2019, when Mahomes had the knee injury, could not play in that one, obviously. 2021, Rodgers tested positive for COVID. That was quite the shit show. And then there were 2 opportunities for them to meet in the Super Bowl. So the Chiefs and 49ers obviously played in Super Bowl 54, but the Packers could have been that team in the NFC Championship game, but the 49ers were too much for them to handle. And then a year later, when the Chiefs played the Bucs, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers were in the NFC title game again, but did not make it through, fell short again. So They've had 5 opportunities. This reminds me a lot of the UFC matchup, Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson, which was supposed to determine the best lightweight in all of MMA to ever happen. But it's just so weird. Like Khabib got injured twice, Tony got injured twice, and then the 5th time, Khabib was in Russia right in the thick of the pandemic, and the pandemic of all things shut down that fight from happening for a 5th time. So it's wild. Develop a top 10 wide receiver during the season and we get another Lombardi, period. It would help, Patrick. I don't think it's required. Look at last year. I think Juju was on his way to being a top 10 guy up until his injury, but the Chiefs were able to get to the Super Bowl last year just fine. And again, keep in mind, like Mahomes had the 2 worst offensive tackles last year, Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown. And look at them right now. Like Andrew Wiley is not doing the Commanders any favors whatsoever. People were complaining about him during last week's loss to the Bills. And the Bengals offensive line is just complete garbage all around. Orlando Brown, same offensive tackle the way he was in Kansas City and in Baltimore. Or not in Baltimore, I take that back because he was a right tackle then, but you get the idea. Anyone MVP almost unanimously. One vote went to Jalen Hurts. The other one went to Josh Allen, but the voter was just throwing it at the Bills' way because of the way the medical staff handled the DeMar Hamlin situation, which I don't know why you would throw a vote because of that. I mean, there are other ways to honor. Like if you're an AP voter and that's how you use your vote, I'm sorry, I don't know. I've got nothing for you. Would love to see MVS catch a long pass during the Jets game for a touchdown. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And you look at there's speed all around with this Chiefs team. MVS, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Kadarius Toney, Justin Ross. I mean, so much, and even the running backs. And we saw it last year with Jerick McKinnon and how he did in the passing game. I mean, he was one of the best touchdown scorers in the last 2 months of the season. Joe Namath suiting up. Yeah, that would make for a very interesting game Sunday night. I think there are some Jets fans that would rather. I remember when the Chiefs had Matt Castle and Brady Quinn, like that era of Chiefs football. I remember the running joke was we should start calling Len Dawson to see if he would be willing to come out of retirement. Should we all overreact to Blaine Gabbert's poor performance coming in for Mahomes last week? Okay, this is a good question because like no one cares so much about Blaine Gabbert right now, right? I mean, there's no reason to go crazy about it, but what if Mahomes suffers a season-ending injury? You still have all this talent around you and you don't want it to let it go to waste. Blaine Gabbert really has not looked good in the preseason nor in the regular season. Obviously, the only regular season game he's played is the Bears game. It just wasn't a good look. They did get going a little bit towards the end of the game, but then the throw to Rashee Rice off his hands went for a pick. It's like, okay, all right, you can't blame that one on Gabbert. But in general, his overall body of work, Gabbert just has not looked very good. Preseason and regular season. I don't know. I will say, I mean, like Chad Henne, when Mahomes went out in that playoff game against the Jaguars and the Chiefs went 98 yards, 99 yards, whatever that was. And everybody was saying, oh, see, the Chiefs can win with anybody in Andy Reid's offense. Well, did we see what happened last week with Blaine Gabbert? I don't know if that's really true. So many people, again, like, the Mahomes haters came out and said he's overrated because Chad Henne was able to march down the field just fine with the Chiefs offense. Do you really think Chad Henne would have been able to beat the Bengals the following week? Do you think he would have been able to help the Chiefs come back down by 10 at halftime in the Super Bowl? Listen, I love Chad Henne and everything he's done for the organization, filling in as a backup in that Browns game in the playoffs. And he's had a couple of more moments where he came in and helped out the Chiefs, obviously that Jaguars game. But, man, it's like, if you really believe what you're saying about how Henne can easily take over, then, you know, would you be willing to put money if Henne were to start that Super Bowl? No, of course not. There are very few backups who've been able to unexpectedly. Honestly, the only backup I can recall, like I know a lot of people say Kurt Warner, but he eventually became a great player. The guy ended up in the Hall of Fame. The only quarterback I can recall who has done well in the postseason, a backup quarterback that is Nick Foles. Nick Foles, excuse me. So, outside of him, which is odd because he's had a weird career. I mean, the guy's a journeyman in the NFL. Everyone thought he finally found a permanent home in Jacksonville, but there's you're not winning games if Mahomes is not there. Plain and simple. You might reach the playoffs, especially with how terrible the AFC West is. The only threat in this division is honestly the Chargers. I thought the Broncos might have stepped up, but that's not even close to happening. The Raiders, yeah, sure, they were in sole possession of first place in week 1, and they were celebrating that. That is their Super Bowl right there. That is their Super Bowl, plain and simple. But yeah, I'd be concerned if Blaine Gabbert took over. Honestly, I think they just got to keep fresh bodies in and out. Too much talent, CJ says. Are you talking about like in rotation actively with this upcoming game? I don't know what you mean by that. Yeah, it's important to keep bodies fresh for sure. Especially, when you get to November and December, weather gets cold, obviously, and it's not easy to play in those conditions. More injuries happen during those times, which is completely natural. And yeah, I've heard so many athletes say this. No one's 100% in December. No one. You're saying in rotations. Okay. No, I get what you're saying. And you do that a lot with defensive players. I suppose it could work with offensive players too, with the receivers and tight ends. But you do want to have that clear-cut number one guy. And the Chiefs really don't have that number one pass catcher at wide receiver. Obviously, your number one pass catcher for the offense is Travis Kelce. And he's gotten off to a bit of a slow start. Didn't play in week 1, working his way back into things. Still found the end zone in each of the last 2 games. Every game Travis Kelce has played, he's found the end zone. Obviously, very small sample size, but still. Okay, that's what you mean. Okay, I appreciate the clarification. Sometimes it's always hard to understand through text what some people are saying. Joe says, do we think that the Chiefs will re-sign Snead? Okay, I have to give you a hard time, Joe, because you wrote resign. That you have to put a hyphen after the letters R and E to make it re-sign. Otherwise, it's resign. I say it every offseason. There are actually a lot of journalists who, they get that wrong. There are a lot of bloggers. Obviously, bloggers are not journalists. But if you're blogging and you want to be taken seriously, you have to have good grammar like a journalist. Anyway, I'm teasing you, John. I'm giving you shit. Do we think the Chiefs are going to re-sign L'Jarius Sneed? I definitely think they want to. Will they? There are other priorities right now. Obviously, the Chris Jones one. If you can make it work around your salary cap, and I did throw out a proposal on my podcast earlier this week. What if you don't give Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith a new deal? Obviously, that's not what they want to hear. But if you re-sign Chris Jones and front load his deal, like a 3-4 year deal, and then you re-sign Humphrey and Smith for 2025, and you can promise them to be the highest paid players at their positions, you can probably make that work. That would be the only way I see that as a realistic possibility. Same with Nick Bolton. I think that's the best way to go about it. Taylor Swift will be in a suite with Aaron Rodgers. What are the odds of this happening? Well, I don't think they're going to be in the same suite, but they will be in a suite for this game. Yeah. Little did we, if you told me before week 1 that Aaron Rodgers and Taylor Swift would watch this game specifically from their suites, I would be so confused. I would not know what the hell is going on in our world. I guess the Aaron Rodgers one is not surprising at some point, given that this matchup between him and Mahomes is just never meant to happen, I guess. But yeah. By the way, I just have to say, I already wrote a post about this morning. Like the people complaining about Taylor Swift, it's like, relax. This is fun. Like, chill the fuck out. This is harmless. This is fun and something even funny. Like Fox News made a big deal about her cussing this morning. Like it's obviously, I mean, Fox News making a big deal of someone cussing. Imagine that. But it's like, 10 years ago, if you told me this would be the direction of like Chiefs coverage, I would laugh. And by the way, Tim Kalishaw, who, if you're familiar with him, it's probably because of his appearances on Around the Horn. He wrote a column in the Dallas Morning News or Dallas Morning Star, whichever one it is, saying that step aside Dallas Cowboys, the Chiefs are now America's team. It's like, dude, you better have bodyguards with you in the city of Dallas. I mean, Dallas should probably care about their football team the way they laid an egg last week, but that was kind of funny. But in general, it's like, listen, people complaining about the Taylor Swift post on this page. The people complaining are not even commenting on the football posts. Like, you can't have it both ways. You cannot bitch about the Taylor Swift the Taylly Swift posts from me and then not comment on the football content, which, by the way, the football content this week, they've been bad. And by the way, I agree with all of you complainers. I would rather discuss more football and I would rather you guys comment more on the football stuff than the Taylor Swift stuff, but no, you're not. So yes, of course I'm going to blame you guys for it. It's not my fault you guys are commenting on that stuff. Read a couple more here. You think we need to send another backup quarterback? Yeah. In response to Blake's question, obviously with the Gabbert situation, not really a situation, but he just didn't look good. I don't know, man. Here's my thing: is like, who do you go after? I mean, you're gonna sign Kaepernick? No. Carson Wentz? Ugh, stay away from that one. Here's my thing. Whoever it is you sign, let's say you sign him today, Friday, September the 29th. How are you going to, how is that going to work? You have to learn a brand new offense. You have to pick all these things up. Yeah, sure. Carson Wentz might have some familiarity because he played for a coach from the Andy Reid tree. So maybe that part would help. But I'm just not a fan of Carson Wentz in general. He has looked awful. I thought he was on his way to an MVP the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. But you suffer a late season injury, that's going to hurt your chances. Look at Derek Carr in 2016. Look at Jalen Hurts last year. So ultimately, I'm just not sure mid-season coming in, if you need a new quarterback, I just don't know how that's going to pan out, like how much time. Here, I'll say this. There was word got out that Phillip Rivers was going to apparently play for the 49ers if the 49ers beat the Eagles, because the 49ers lost Jimmy Garoppolo, they lost Trey Lance, they lost what's his name? Brock Purdy. They lost Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship game, which obviously was a huge reason why that game was a blowout loss for them. But they apparently were going to get Phillip Rivers to play in the Super Bowl if they won the NFC title game. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I know what 49ers fans online were saying, 2 weeks would be plenty of time to learn the offense. No, it's not. Stop. Just stop. 2 weeks is not at all good enough time, especially for facing the best team of the opposing conference. It's just not. There's no way you can get things down and get chemistry with your receivers on such short notice. And by the way, with all the distractions that comes with Super Bowl Media Week, Chris Jones was on Travis Kelce's podcast, Travis and Jason Kelce's podcast, I should say, the New Heights podcast. And they talked about how in the Super Bowl, you're dealing with all this media hoopla that comes with being a Super Bowl team. And they were just like, man, we kind of got tired of it. We just wanted to practice and prepare for the game. not do media every single day for a long period of time. So, and listen, I love the whole media thing, especially the big media night, because that's always fun and crazy, and you hear all these non-sports people who go out there and have a lot of fun with it. So, that's what the Super Bowl media night is all about. But Philip Rivers on such short notice would be dealing with all of that in addition to prepare if the 49ers won. So there's no way you could get that down and expect to have a realistic shot at winning the Super Bowl on 2 weeks notice. There's no way. Joe says, I think by the end of the year, Rashee Rice will be our number one receiver. Somebody else said this too on the pay. I remember this comment, and maybe it was from you, Joe, or maybe it was from somebody else. Someone else said this a few weeks ago. I would not be surprised. I think Rashee Rice is doing really well. I think he is picking up the offense better than Sky Moore is. And the reason I'm comparing him to Sky Moore is because Sky Moore was a second-round pick. And listen, I've always defended Sky Moore. It's like, look, the guy was already low on the depth chart because he was behind MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster, two vets who joined the team last offseason. The Chiefs had a shit ton of newcomers at wide receiver last year with the Tyreek Hill trade. Can't remember his name, but Patrick Mahomes' BFF who retired, Garrett Dieter. You had so many new faces. The only returning wide receiver was Mecole Hardman, and he missed so many games last year due to an injury. So it felt like you had all new receivers last year. I think Rashee Rice is doing really well. Second round draft picks generally are guys who can either start for you or get a lot of snaps. And Rashee Rice is getting a lot of snaps right now for the Chiefs, which is good. That is what you want from a second-round draft pick. And I think he's picking up the offense very well. And I think he's got a chance to do more of that this week against the Jets and in the next few games. The next 5 games, I mentioned this on the podcast earlier this week. I'm not going to go over it in detail, so check that out if you haven't done so already. But the next 5 games are, again, I know what you guys are saying with, not taking teams lightly, but there's a really good chance to just go off, destroy all these teams, and really get ready for that Germany game against Miami, because that one is going to be – the fans in Germany are getting a showdown. I'm excited for that one, as long as no one gets hurt all the way through. And by the way, let me say this too. And for those of you who are joining us a little late, if you guys have any comments, questions, whatever you want to say, please ask them below, and we'll get to those. I see I have a few more comments left, so – unless we get a bunch of comments in the next minute or so, I'm probably going to wrap up soon. Tua Tagovailoa, I wanted to talk about him because I think he's having a remarkable season, obviously. If you look at the MVP odds, I was actually surprised by this. Patrick Mahomes is number 2. Tua is number 1. Obviously, these are very early odds. But I will say this. If Tua can keep that up and stay ahead in the race for MVP and win MVP end of the year, man, what a story that would be. I could actually see the voters voting for him over Patrick Mahomes for the sole fact that so many people last year were saying that Tua should seriously consider retiring. And everything he dealt with last year, that scary injury on Thursday night where he was carted off, where his fingers locked up, that was fucking scary just to watch. When that injury happened, so many things he dealt with last year, to go from that to potentially win MVP with this high-powered offense, an offense that's better than it was last year, boy, what a story that would be. In my opinion, that was one of the best stories in all of sports. Tua's got a really good chance to win MVP, maybe comeback player of the year award. I know a lot of people think DeMar Hamlin's going to get that, but with the way Tua is playing, I would not be shocked if he tries to get in the lead. I mean, not that he can do anything to get in the lead for that. That's up to the voters, but I think he has a chance at winning 2 awards. I don't know if we've ever had someone win comeback player of the year and another award. Maybe Tom Brady. FLAP awards. Let me quickly check Pro Football Reference, because I know they have these things. What year did Brady win comeback player of the year award? I think it was 2009, because in 08 was when he got injured. That happened against the Chiefs. Yeah, so in 2009, Tom Brady won Comeback Player of the Year. Did he win Offensive Player of the Year also that year? No, Chris Johnson. Man, remember that name? Chris Johnson won. Who was MVP that year? Peyton Manning. Okay. How did Peyton have by that point in his career? He had 04. He had 03. Oh, he tied with McNair in 03, so that's 2. That was his 4th MVP. How many did he finish with? 5. Yeah, he only won one more MVP after that. So, yeah, I think Tua's got a chance to win both the Comeback Player of the Year award and the MVP award. He's got a really good shot at it. Okay, let's see. We're at a couple more here, and then we'll get out of here. Blake says it would have been nice if we kept Shane Buechele. Yeah, a lot of people were surprised that Shane Buechele was let go. I'm not sure the logic in keeping Gabbert over him. I know there was that one game against the Cardinals where all 4 quarterbacks had a rating, a quarterback rating of 100, and Mahomes had the lowest rating of the 4, which I thought was insane. But yeah, I was a little surprised that Shane Buechele was let go. I thought he was having his best preseason since becoming a member of the Chiefs. So that was a surprise to me, for sure. Why don't we end on this comment right here? The last one. Austin says, Taylor Swift, football players 87. Not quite sure what you're trying to say. Football players 87. I mean, obviously, you're referring to Travis Kelce with the 87, but yeah, I mean, everyone's all over the Taylor Swift hype. She has taken off her Philly green and is putting on the Chiefs red. So welcome to Chiefs Kingdom, Taylor Swift. By the way, there are rumors that the NFL, and specifically like Sunday Ticket, they want to hand out these friendship bracelets that say KC and then a heart and NY. Because this is going to be a home game essentially for the Chiefs. Jets fans have lost interest in the season. So that is apparently a thing. I guess the Jets have yet to approve of it. In fact, I've heard they rejected it, but there's still a little over 48 hours before they can change things. So there is time, but that's out there. That's a possibility. Only with the Chiefs do these things happen, of course. All right, guys. This is a lot of fun. Big thanks to you guys for joining me for this Red Friday live chat. My name is Farzin Vousoughian. Thank you all once again for making this part of your Red Friday. Enjoy the rest of your Red Friday. I am out. Take care.